Hello again, everybody. It's Jason Powers. So, this is going to be a brief broadcast today, but I will get into it quickly. Right now, I'm just playing the opening music. So, today we're going to discuss the Chinese and what they've been up to recently. And I think we're going to find out that they've been quite busy the last couple of days. And we'll discuss some of the reporting that's been issued. So, to start off with, and I'll turn down the music here. So yesterday, they completed their first LNG deal in Yuan with the French. I posted a Substack yesterday with that LinkedIn. So it seems pretty clear that they've made a decision, or the French have made a decision, I should say, that they care more about their LNG than they care about any support of the alliance. But that will interplay with a few other stories that I've been looking at. So, and I'll leave links in the description to all these ideas. So, yesterday, China struck a deal with Brazil to ditch the dollar for trade. So, they're going to cut out the U.S. dollar, which is, of course, part of their plan to replace the U.S. dollar as the monetary currency, or the currency of choice for settlement of deals around the world. So this is being worked on, and Brazil is not is a part of, obviously, the BRICS coalition, but they're also a part of a soon to be larger coalition, because there was other things going on. But we'll read this real quickly because I'm trying to get this in 15 minutes. The deal will enable China, the top rival to the U.S. economic hegemony, and Brazil, the biggest economy in Latin America, to conduct their massive trade and financial transactions directly, exchanging yuan for reals, and vice versa, instead of going through the dollar. China is Brazil's biggest trading partner, with a record $150 billion in bilateral trade last year. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China and Bank of Communications (BBM) will execute the transactions, officials say. China has similar currency deals with Russia, Pakistan, and several other countries. Again yesterday, and these are from the InsidePaper.com. So Saudi Arabia has agreed to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a dialogue partner, state media reported on Wednesday, the latest indication of closer political ties with China. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established in 2001 as a political and economic and security organization derived from Western institutions. Besides China, its 8 members include India, Pakistan, and Russia, as well as 4 Central Asian countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, if I pronounce that right. The cabinet approved the decision at a meeting on Tuesday, chaired by King Salman, the official Saudi press agency reported. The move would grant Riyadh the status of a dialogue partner in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Other countries will with either observer or dialogue partner status include Egypt, Iran, and Qatar. So Riyadh's move to partner with the bloc comes less than 3 weeks after the unveiling of a landmark China-brokered reconciliation deal with Iran to restore full diplomatic relations that were severed 7 years ago. Long bitter rivals, Shiite majority Iran and mainly Sunni Saudi Arabia, have engaged in a series of proxy conflicts in the region, such as the protracted fight in Yemen. So that's from Inside Paper. I'll leave the links to that particular article. Again yesterday, Zelensky invites China's Xi to Ukraine as U.S. rebuffs alternate peace plan. This is from Zero Hedge. Coming on the heels of Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow, where he met with Vladimir Putin last week, Ukraine's Zelensky has formally invited the Chinese leader to visit Ukraine soon, according to his remarks in a newly published Associated Press interview. "We are ready to see him here," Zelensky said. "I want to speak with him, and I had contact with him before a full-scale war, but during all this year, more than 1 year, I didn't have. Sorry. Zelensky initially expressed openness in comments earlier this month, given in reaction to Beijing's 12-point peace plan. I think some of the Chinese proposals respect international law, and I think we can work on it with China, he said at the time. Just before Xi arrived in Moscow on March 20th, the Wall Street Journal had cited sources as saying there would be a phone call between Xi and Zelensky, but that doesn't appear to have materialized. So, going through this in just 5 minutes. So you notice all the major players are there. You got Russia, you got Brazil, you got Saudi Arabia, and you got Iran. You got obviously Ukraine. They're talking with China. China's taking a leadership role, whereas the United States is sitting on its hind tit and continues to push. Plus, you have France, who's doing deals with China to get LNG into their ports, or obviously into their country. So when you look at all this, the idea here is that this is going to plan. We have given up. I mean, when I say we, the U.S. government has intentionally sabotaged its position as any kind of world leader, and China is taking a lead on all these initiatives. Obviously, they're trying to build towards having the dominance in the world because of their trading positioning. Obviously, for those who know some of the analysis, they're the number one trading partner for a vast majority of larger nations in the world in terms of what they supply to them. And the United States no longer is in that position. We're usually 2 or 3 in terms of our trading, where we're at in the pecking order. Our biggest partners are Canada and Mexico, obviously, and we have some European roles, in particular, like the UK, but I haven't looked at all the data lately on that. But yeah, China's flexing its muscles. They've been gobbling up gold, like about 30 to 40 tons a month. They've been buying it on the open market with Russia's backstop and plus their own internal holdings, which we don't know what they are. They're building up and there's been a story that's been floating around about them building up a two-pronged reserve currency. So they would have an internal reserve currency that's backed by gold, and then they would have an external money, as they call it, in terms of dealing with or making a trade system. Obviously, it's going to be digital. Obviously, it's going to be controlled by them. The idea is to supplant the United States in terms of it being reserve currency, and they're actively pushing to destabilize, obviously our positioning, the U.S. positioning as the world's currency in terms of how we settle all trade and transactions. And it just seems so interesting how Ukraine is turning to China when China has a very well established relationship with Russia right now in terms of how they are interacting with them on a regular basis and in terms of making deals, and they continue to get closer and closer. That's not by accident. And so you have Zelensky, who's been getting all this funding from the United States to back his military, and now he's pivoting to China. And probably within, I don't know, I'll say a month to 6 weeks, I'm making a wild speculation, but I think that's going to happen, where he'll suddenly come to they'll come to some kind of negotiated truce. Xi will look like a hero. The U.S. will have egg on its face, and if the U.S. doesn't cooperate, then there'll be other dominoes that will fall. And of course, I think I realistically think that the U.S. will fail miserably because we don't have leadership, we don't have a plan, we certainly don't have a foreign policy that works. So there's substantial indications that this is going according to the way they want it to. And plus, they're ginning up the fear of war. So this is all being done through transaction, backdoor deals. You see all the big muckety mucks are flying around. Obama just touched down in Australia to talk with their Albanese, I think is his name. He's fairly new prime minister there. Meanwhile, Kevin Rudd has been installed as U.S. ambassador from Australia, and he's he's an expert on Australian. He's an expert on Chinese matters since he wrote his PhD thesis on Xi Jinping, no less, and he speaks Mandarin and that kind of deal. So this is all being, I think, fairly coordinated. But they have to scare the populations. That's the key. They got to keep us in fear. I think the globalists, and they've already very much said so, they said they're in wide agreement on a host of things, but they have to make it seem like they're fighting. I don't think they really. Yeah, they have a war in Ukraine, but it kind of makes you wonder how much of this was just intentionally to just set up the stage, and they didn't care how many died or who gets run over in this, because obviously Zelensky, he's been more than willing to throw any and all people and personnel into this fight, and the casualties there are estimated at well north of 300,000 dead on both sides. I think there's something like 250,000 Ukrainians and about somewhere between 70 and 100,000 Russians, but those are estimates. I don't have any verified sources on that. There are several that are keeping track or keeping themselves abreast of that situation. But nevertheless, when you see this push by Xi to insert himself, and obviously, like I said, these deals have just come real recently. And of course, with the banking, if you think about the U.S. banking system recently, with the collapse of two major entities, and then the Swiss banks with UBS and Credit Suisse, suddenly all these trading deals are being worked out, all these partnerships. Xi's going and involving himself in the Middle East and managing to get all kinds of movement on things with Iran and Saudi Arabia. He'll be working on the UAE and all these other places. I don't doubt that eventually they'll figure out a way to shoehorn Iraq in there. There's a consolidation of power based upon this agreement between Xi and Putin and their agenda. And of course, they've been routing LNG through India for quite some time, and India's been improving their positioning. Obviously, they're part of this Shanghai Cooperative organization, which is growing in power. And lastly, they'll probably go after, eventually, Taiwan has, they lost their status with a small nation, I think it's Guatemala. They told them to get out, so they closed down their embassy. So Taiwan is only recognized by like a dozen nations across the world, and that's going down. And eventually, once they're not recognized, I think they'll be subsumed back into the mainland China. That is going to happen, because they're going to cut a sweetheart deal with them in terms of what they'll say is, look, we don't want to invade you, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to just nix this whole thing. And the United States cannot fight. There's no logical way of doing this. And of course, we may try our efforts, but I think our efforts would be better served. And yeah, and it's a good question. I don't have the right answer here, and I'm not going to be able to do it in the next short time. But there's a summary of a bunch of information regarding the Chinese Communist Party and what their positioning is, and how they are actually assuming a great deal of power through deals, and they are looking to make themselves the top dog in the world. So I'm going to leave it there for now, and thank you for listening.